Natural Tanzanite crystals of this size are amongst the rarest of all gems, and I'm going to facet this one into a work of art. Hi, I'm Steve Moriarty from MoreGems.com, and today we are working on faceting this 212 carat piece of Tanzanite rough. And the first step that we want to do is try to identify any inclusions that are in it. And to do that, we immerse it in methylene iodide. This is my immersion bottle. This is a big one, just fits in there. We take the methylene iodide, cover the Tanzanite crystal, and then you'll be able to see that this allows us to see into the crystal. It has a refractive index very similar to what Tanzanite is, so the surface of the gem tends to disappear. And we just start looking at it from all directions, try and reflect any inclusions that are in there so we can identify their location. Just keep turning it and looking. It appears to be quite clean. A couple of veils down here at the bottom, but should go out naturally during cutting. So as far as I can see, it is relatively free of inclusions. So now the next step is going to be, I'm going to saw a little piece of this off to try and get a 2-3 carat stone off some of the material that I would normally grind off. And then we're going to preform by grinding on a diamond lap. Try and preform the shape a little better, then we'll dop it up. So in preforming this stone, I've got a little section here that's got some extra material that maybe I can get 2 or 3 carats if I saw it off. I'm going to be cutting from this direction, and this is just kind of excess that you either grind it off or you saw it off and hopefully have something left to cut. So I'm going to try and saw it. It's always risky when you do this. You know, do you cut too much and end up affecting the size of the main stone? Do you cause damage? Just a lot of things can go wrong with it. But if I can get 3 carats out of it, I mean, that's can be more than $1,000. So worthwhile trying. You ready? That's So here's what I sawed off, and the sawed off piece is almost 20 carats, you know, so it's not going to be a very good yield, but could be 4 or 5 carats in there, you know, and hopefully I didn't affect the size of the original stone. I don't think I did. So I think it was a successful saw cut. So I'll be working with the Ultratec V5 is the machine that I use, and I'm going to start preforming this Tanzanite, which is now under 200 carats. We had a saw cut that weighed almost 20 carats, the piece I cut off, and we lost about 4.5 carat just in the sawing portion of it. So we're down to about 197 carats currently. So I'm going to be using this is a 280 grit diamond topper. It goes on top of this master lap to support it. Before I start the machine up, we're going to start the water running. This is going to clean the swarf, the material I've cut off this gem, clean it off the lap so it continues to cut properly. And how I'm going to start is I'm just going to start working the portions of this stone that I know are not of use. And as I look at it, there's probably another piece I could saw off, and I'm going to go and I'm going to saw this corner off here, because it's not of use, and there could be 2 carat stone within that piece. A little piece, but it's probably 4 carat. So the little piece I cut off weighs 4.5 carats. So I mean, I could cut a 2 carat stone. It's got good shape. Gonna be light color, but could be a pretty stone. You know, could be probably worth $500. All right. So what I'm going to start working on is what is the girdle of this stone. I mean, I'm going to get, I think, an oval in here. So I can start working some of this material to form a girdle. Take a little off there, here, a little here. So going to just round it up a little bit. So I'm working on a place to put the dop, trying to find the right place for the table. I've got these 2 sloping sides on this piece of rough, so I've got to find some kind of compromise between the 2 that I can get a flat that is going to accommodate for the crown of the stone. But mainly I need a good place to put the dop. So it's starting to look more like an antique cushion than an oval. Still got a lot of work to do to get the shape right. I don't have to get it exact, but I do want it close. So when I dop it, I know where the center of the stone actually is. Got some issues with some inclusions over here I have to deal with. So I just not sure how deep I have to go to get through that to account for the crown and the culet. You know, I just need to get to a girdle point that is into clean material. Not sure how deep that goes, so that could cost me. For sure. So this was my part that I sawed off, and I'm going to work a little bit on this, get a little closer to a culet, get rid of some of this material that won't be needed. So I'm probably close enough as far as a preform. Again, it's antique cushion. We'll check the weight on it, see where we're at. So I'm preparing to dop this Tanzanite up. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to mark this one. I don't typically do this, but it's such a big stone, I don't have the right tools to do my typical way, which I'll show you how I normally do it. So I'm going to mark this, and we're going to start by taking a measurement that's well beyond halfway across the stone, and I'm going to put a mark on it. Reverse it, put another, whoop, get that right. Put another mark there. And I got somewhat of a semblance of where the center of the stone is. I'll use that later when I actually dop up the stone. Now I'm going to show you what I typically do. I have a bigger dop here with some dental wax in it to support the stone. And we'll drop it in there. And the only thing close I have, I typically use my dops, and I'll find one close to the size of what the stone is, and I'll use it to help me center the stone. This is actually a centering device, but I'm using the outside of it as a reference for the girdle of this gem. Yeah. So you can see I'm about the size of this stone, and this is what I use as a reference to find the center of the stone. Get that set on flat onto the table of the stone, and then I'll just manipulate the stone till I'm close to this distance. And then if I look at this distance, this dop is very close to the width of the stone. So as long as the dop is known to be round, it is a good reference to line up your stone. So I've used this large dop to help me center the stone. Now I'm going to take a couple extra steps. I've selected this to be my dop. You know, one thing you want to, when you use this method, you want to make sure you don't have these cut marks in, that when you're cutting, you cut a little deeper into the stone, and you actually make a flat on the dop. So now it's not perfectly round. It's pretty much perfectly round at the top, but you'd like to be using a dop that's definitely perfectly round. Let's see if I have another one. This one maybe, this, all right. So let's take this out. And let's first, I'm going to check, see if this is close to what I had marked with the millimeter gauge. Okay, well, the marks are close but not perfect, so I'm going to actually take a gauge and measure this. Just put it on the side of the dop and then take it to the end of the stone. And that direction's pretty darn close. As is that one. So I'm pretty close to center as far as I can tell. So first step is clean off the dop with some alcohol. I have 99% alcohol isopropyl. Clean off the dop, make sure there's no oil on it. Line it up, make sure it's flat on the facet you've made. Looks flat, and now I'm going to measure it just one more time just to make sure. So now that I've got the stone centered on the dop, I'm ready to glue it up. And I currently and for years have used epoxies. I don't epoxy underneath the dop. That causes it to be much more difficult to remove. I just epoxy around the dop. So if there's stones like blue zircon, sapphires, that I know they can take the heat, I do put glue underneath the dop because it is much more durable then. But the issue I have is actually on another 100 carat Tanzanite, after I had tried to remove the glue using heat, it actually fractured on me just from heating up the dop to remove the glue. At the time it was wax. It was a fluke, I'm sure, just something in the Tanzanite that caused that to be a problem. But since then I've used epoxy, and I find it a good, easy way to dop things. It takes more time. But once I glue it, and I glue it around the edge, I can just kind of peel it off, and then most of the time the stone just falls off with little use of heat. So I'm going to mix up the epoxy now, and we'll glue this up and be ready to cut tomorrow. So the only thing you want to make sure is you get enough glue on it, but it doesn't go over the edges, because the thing about epoxy, if you start cutting on it, it can loosen the bond up. So just try and keep the material off the girdle area. So as I don't use a design, the first thing I do is cut the girdle. I'm going to try it with a 600 lap, this big a stone. It may take a little more aggressive cutting, but you're always best cutting with the least coarse lap as possible. It'll be easier to finish in the end if you do that. So this is a 600, and like I say, we're just going to try and find the girdle and set up the girdle, and then I can cut from there. It's probably going to be a step cut, would be my guess. So I'll just try and get this in here symmetrically. So we'll set this to 90 degrees. Make sure everything's tight. I'm going to start with one index to either side and cut on the 96 and the 48 indexes. So our centering was not perfect, but pretty close. Natural Tanzanite crystals of this size are amongst the rarest of all gems, and I'm going to facet this one into a work of art. So I'm going to cut both ends to 90. So now my stone is pretty much squared up to what it is going to be. Okay, so far I've cut 2 facets here, 2 on the opposite side, and matched them to depth. These are plus and minus 1, meaning the index straight across from each other is 96. So I cut these one index to either side. That's what I mean by plus and minus 1. So I'm going to try and find the corner. I'm going to see what plus and minus 6 does, and then go from there. So on the ends, instead of plus and minus 6 like I did on the long side, I'm going to try 3, see where that takes us. Plus and minus 3. So it's 75. You know, the ends, 72 is the index for the ends, 72 and 24. So I'm cutting 3 to either side of that, 75 and 69 on this side. And do the same for the opposite side. So I did plus and minus 3. Looks like I have to go further because this facet didn't cut very far. This one cut fairly deep. You know, these are cut to the same depth, and I got to get this facet wider and closer to the corners of the stone. So I'll move it to 4 and cut again. So here's my plus and minus 1, and this is the plus and minus 4. And the same I've done on this side. So it looks about right. Now we got to put another set of facets in to close off these corners. So it'll probably be something like 9, or that might do it. So on this side, I'm going to try plus and minus 9. So I've got an inclusion on this end I'm trying to get out, or get mostly out. Looks like the crown will cut a lot of it away. It is a vertical inclusion, which will be difficult to see if there's anything left of it. I can't quite tell if there's any part of it left. I've got most of it out. So I'm going to leave it there for this time and continue cutting the girdle. Nope, this is 4. This is 4. So I'm going to try and close up these corners. I'm going to put another facet on the ends at plus and minus 6. So I've got 1, 4, and 6. And then on this side I'm going to use, currently I've got 1 and 6. I think I'm going to try 8. And maybe that'll close up these corners. It. So I've changed a couple of these. I changed this one from 6 to plus and minus 4, and this one from plus and minus 4 to plus and minus 3, just to even out the facets. Now the only other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add another facet here at 0 at the 96 and 48 indexes, just to give me an extra facet along this long side. Alright, so that's my girdle line. The next thing I'll do would be close the culet, and then I can start putting in 3 rows or 4 rows of facets, whatever will fit. So I'm going to close up the culet, and we're going to use 41 degrees as the culet angle. We'll set it on 96, cut a 96 and 48. You can see this is what we're cutting. So the culet angle I'm using for this one is 41 degrees. Tanzanite, I'll generally be between 41 and 42. This is all determined by the refractive index of the material. The higher the refractive index, the lower angle you can cut. So quartz with a lower refractive index, we generally use 43 as the culet angle. So all based on refractive index. So now that I've got the culet closed, I have references now that I can start to cut in the girdle row of step facets, which will be the lowest row. This will be the culet row, this is the girdle row, and I'll start by cutting in the girdle row of step facets. Okay, now that we have the culet closed, we have to decide what angles we're going to cut at. I'd like to get 4 rows of steps in a stone this large, but I may not have enough material, particularly here at the girdle, to get 4 rows in. So the culet angle, the culet row of facets is going to be at 41 degrees, and you have to have a minimum of 5 degrees between steps is a good rule of thumb, but I prefer greater if possible, 7 or 8 degrees between steps. So I'm probably going to start with the girdle row of facets, which will be the lowest row. Probably I'm going to try 55 degrees, see if I have enough material to do that. Possible I'll have to cut lower, but we'll see. Okay, so to do this step cut, I just have to use the same indexes that I cut the girdle at, is what I'm going to cut to each of these 3 or 4 rows of facets at. So the first one will be plus and minus 1 of 96. So I'm not going to get 4 rows in. You know, the ideal would be at 61 degrees, this would go halfway up, and I'd still have some girdle here, but that's not going to happen. So I'm going to try 59 or 59 degrees, which I still may not be enough. And just go with 3 rows, 6 degrees apart. And it looks like I'm going to have to go just 5 degrees apart. So we'll be at 40 or 56 degrees. So that's the minimum I can go, so it is going to be whatever it is. We'll see how far. You know, ideally I'd like to get halfway up, so I'd have 3 equal rows. So that's about as far as I'm going to get. Not quite halfway up, but I don't mind having the culet row a little bit larger because it's at the ideal reflecting angle. So it'll be a little larger than the other 2 rows. So there's the first 3 facets, and once I finish all the way around, we'll come back and take another look. So I've finished the girdle row at 56 degrees. Now I'm going to go back to the culet row where we close the culet. I'm going to cut that row at 41 degrees, and then I'll decide whether I go with 3 facets. There still is a possibility of doing 4 rows also. So let's cut the culet row and we'll figure that out. So I've finished the girdle or the culet row. So now we have the culet row and the girdle row. And now I have to figure out whether I'll put one more row in or 2 rows of facets. So now I'm going to cut the next row in the middle of these two at 46 degrees, and then I'll decide whether there's room for another row at 51 degrees. Alright, so the 3 rows are finished, and that's what I'm going to leave it at, is 3 rows. So we'll go from this 1200 metal lap, and I'll do a pre-polish on this 1200 lightning lap, which produces a significantly finer finish than this metal lap. And then we'll go on to polish, and then on to the crown. So I've finished the pre-polish on the 1200 lightning lap, and as you can see, the stone is definitely shinier. So it's closer to a finish, and it'll make the polishing on the bat lap with 50,000 diamond easier that we have this nice pre-polish. So I'll change out the laps to the bat lap. And Bat Lap is a product of Gear Loose, who is the manufacturer of this lap. It's a proprietary tin lap, and I use 50,000 diamond powder on it. And I'll shed this visor, and now I'll go to a loop so I can see the finish much better. My technique for applying diamond and how I do it has changed a little bit, because I was having issues with polishing Tanzanite, getting scratches. But what I found is that I was using too much diamond. So I've sprayed WD-40 on this tissue. I clean it once, and then I spray it a second time with a little less WD-40, because too much, and then you have a hard time cleaning the stone off and seeing if your polish is right. So just get your finger a little bit with WD-40 on it. Touch it lightly and not too much diamond. Just spread it across and spread it well. So now we'll start polishing. I'm going to start polishing the culet row, and that's at 41 degrees. You can see I'm not quite getting the top of this facet, so I'll move the mast up until it's polishing the entire facet. And that's pretty much getting it. So polishing is what takes the longest, and particularly with the size of the facets that we're dealing with on this stone, definitely much longer than a normal size gem would take. So I'll finish up this row and we'll show you what we've done. So I finished the first row, the culet row. Now I'll move on to the second row. Should be a little quicker because smaller facets. All right, so I've finished polishing the pavilion. Took hours, but got it done, and I'm happy with it. I did a quick weight estimation by measurement, and it says 102.58. So much depends on this part of the crown, what the shape of the crown is, just how that damaged area there, or that part of the crystal goes into the crown of the stone, which will determine what angle I can cut it at. So hopefully we can hit that 100 carat size stone. So now let's transfer the stone. Pull it out. Now I'm going to use a V-dop for this, and during this transfer I will glue inside the stone because we're just going to soak it off anyway, so there'll be no heat involved. So just a quick clean off with some alcohol, just to make sure our epoxy seals well. Now to mix up our epoxy. I usually mix this for at least a minute, maybe more. Okay, it's going to seal up here pretty quick. All right. Take a little glue, rub it onto the stone, make sure it gets good attachment. And fill the dopstick. Push them together. Tighten everything up. Put a little more around the edges. Should do it. So next we'll start cutting the crown. And if this area in the corner doesn't affect me too much, maybe we'll hit our 100 carat, which would be amazing. So now we've transferred our stone, and I will have to remove this dop so I can cut the crown of the stone. A lot of glue on here, so it's going to take me a while to pick it off. Gonna take a while. No. All right, there we go. We're ready to cut the crown. So I'm going to try cutting at 50 degrees, but I've got a couple of low areas here and here that may require me to cut at a lower angle than 50 degrees for the girdle facets. So for the crown, I'm also going to cut a step cut, just like on the Pavilion. So I'll just match up the girdle facets and start cutting those. So I finished the girdle row of facets. I had to lower it from 50 degrees down to 43 degrees just to get rid of some of the inclusions that were in it. But we're ready to move on, and I'll probably cut the table row of facets and then put a middle row in and then go to polish. So I'm going to cut the table in, and how I typically do it is just vertically. I don't use the 45 adapter. On occasion I do if I have an issue, but I prefer to just set this at 0, and actually instead of setting it at 0, I set it at 1, because 0 is everywhere from here on back, you know, so you really don't know when you're on 0. So I just go to the point, I put it on 1, so I know I'm very close to 0. I just personally find this quicker and easier than transferring it to the 45-degree DOP and having to take it out. It doesn't always work, but generally I found that this works well. So here's the cut crown. Now I'll go on to pre-polish, and then on to final finish. So let's move on to the pre-polish. This is a 1200. This happens to be from Ultratec, no longer manufactured, but very similar to the Lightning Lap. I'm going to give this one a shot and do our pre-polish, and then go to 50,000 diamond on a bat lap to do our final polish. So while I have this the table in position, I'm going to go ahead and polish it before I pre-polish all the other facets. Looks like we're polishing down here, so I'm going to lower it. Still missing a little area over here, so I'll just keep polishing and it should keep moving down. Let's see. So I managed to finish the table, which was a bit difficult, but that's what you get with a table this size. Just takes some time. But nice finish, and we'll go on to pre-polish the rest of the stone and then go on to polish. About that facet. All right, the pre-polish is all finished. Now we're going to move on to polishing. We'll be using the Bat Lap with 50,000 diamond grit. So finally finished, probably 15, 16, 17 hours in the process. But it is a big Tanzanite. Whether it'll hit 100 carat, we'll find out tomorrow. I had to lower the crown angles quite a bit and take the girdle in a little to get rid of some of the inclusion, so it may break me under 100 carat. We'll hope and see. Looks like great color. Hopefully we can keep it natural. So I'm going to pick a little of this glue off, and then we're going to put it in the attack. And hopefully by tomorrow we can have it off the top and take a look and weigh it up and hope for that 100 carat. Well, here it is. 79 carats of beautiful natural color. Some unique colors in this. It's mostly blue and purple, but they're kind of different colors than what you'd expect from Tanzanite. And a lot of red flash in this also. It's really a beautiful gem, nice brilliance, and 79 carat.